Welcome back to another episode of the podcast, Come Over for Dinner. Today I have not just one, but two incredibly special guests today. I'm so excited they're here and that they have taken time out of their busy schedule to come and join us today. Welcome, Francis and Donna Fukushon.
Hi, Bess. So good to be here.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
And as you can tell, he has a French accent because he is French. He was born and raised in France and trained as a classical French chef in Lyon, France, and by one of the world's greatest chefs that worked there at the time. And later he became a pastor and a church planter. He planted churches in France and Switzerland, met Donna a little bit later, or maybe did he meet you before the church plants?
Depends on which one.
Oh, okay. Well, in between the church planting, he met Donna, and I'm going to let them tell you a little bit more about their story.
Well, first of all, I didn't plant a church in Switzerland. I worked in Switzerland.
Okay.
We planted a church in Aix-en-Provence, south of France, during my 4 years of seminary, and one in Montreal with a mission to North America, and one in Lyon with mission to the world.
Actually, of course, you're right. You know your own life. I accidentally said you worked as a chef in France and Switzerland.
Exactly, yes.
And then later the church plants in France and Canada.
That's right,
Quebec.
yes.
Quebec. I do have this down. I'm just not reading my notes correctly.
That's right. That's good. So, yes, so that was, we met actually when I was pastor in training. And kind of like the Grey Friars we have here in Moscow. And that was my first training before seminary, and that's when I met Donna. Where were you? Tell us.
Well, in God's providence, excuse me, he prepared all this for me. He put me as a daughter in a Navy family, so I moved all over most of my life and got a taste for different places in the world for international living. And through the Navy, I even learned French, which is an important detail because when I met Francis, he did not speak English. So if I had not been a French speaker already, we would never have had a relationship. But when I was 10 years old, my dad got orders to Paris, France. It was
How exciting.
Right when the Berlin Wall was going up, and he was a part of Navy men who were managing that whole situation in Europe. So I lived in France, and my parents sent me to a French school for 2 of the years that we lived there, and I learned to speak French. I studied completely in French.
That's amazing. And children just absorb languages so readily, so you really are truly fluent in French.
Well, I was young enough to learn it quickly, but I was old enough to not forget it. So I'm grateful for that.
That's wonderful. So you met, and you could speak his language, even though he couldn't speak your language.
I knew how to say "I love you." That's all. That's all she needed to hear.
You knew a few important words, the most important words.
Yeah.
And then once you were married, you lived in the United States for a time?
Yes. So actually, in our first year of marriage, we lived in Lyon, France, and I pastored a church there. And that's when I realized I need to learn about my wife, not just her language, but her culture. That's when we realized in the first year of marriage how different our cultures were. And so I left the church and we moved to Orlando, Florida, and I became a plumber. Because when you don't speak the language, you have to work. And so I became a plumber. I never done plumbing in my life before, but I learned a lot. I learned English with plumbers, which was an interesting way to learn English. And after 3 years in Orlando, I had another amazing offer. That was the second time in my life, actually, to take over a high-end restaurant in Orlando. And I was just convinced that I should not take it and go to seminary. So that's when we decided to go to seminary, and we ended up in Aix-en-Provence for 4 years. I planted a church, a Christian school, and graduated from Reformed Seminary. And after that, we planted churches nonstop.
I might here interject a little story, because you mentioned culture. You wanted to know my culture, and as well as my language. But we began noticing during our first year of marriage that there really were things beyond our language that were different. There were cultural differences that were deep, and one of them is our approach to going to people's homes. I was raised with the thought, when you go to someone's home, don't overstay your welcome. Don't. Anathema. It would be anathema to stay too long and for people to be sitting there just waiting for you to leave. Whereas Francis was raised with the thought, don't dare leave too early after all the work these people have put into it.
Stay for hours.
Yeah, you dare
Enjoy
not leave too
the
early.
day.
So we had never realized there was this difference in our approach to going to people's homes. We would go to people's homes, and I would be thinking after a while, I would be getting antsy thinking, we really need to leave. It's time to leave. And Francis would just kind of be settling in for the
long haul.
And it took a while. It took him coming to the States for these things to come to the surface and to realize that there were a lot of
and there may have been
cultural
surprises at the homes you went to that there weren't, 5 or 6 courses to enjoy.
That's true too.
They have quite a few courses with
yes.
dinner.
Oh, here's another funny story.
Are you going to tell the story about him working as a plumber and you packing his lunchbox? Because you have to tell that story.
No, this is another funny one, though. When we were just married and living in France, we went to his marraine's house, his godmother's house, and she had a meal fixed for us, so we sat down and she brought out this beautiful platter of fish, a whole fish. It was probably a salmon and with sauces and just this amazing fish. And I was so impressed. I thought this was beautiful. And lo and behold, that was the appetizer. I was shocked when then the main course came out, and then the vegetable course, and then cheese and dessert.
Wow, that's
so
incredible.
We both had learning on both ways.
And this godmother, was she the one that trained you as a chef?
No,
or is this a different lady?
That was another lady. Actually, the one who trained me has been working in a restaurant since she was 12 years old. She climbed the ladder, working from washing dishes, observing things, doing all the dirty jobs, all the way to the point where she got a Michelin star. So they call it a Mère Lyonnaise, which is one of the great woman chefs in France, the first chef actually that went to the French television. My godmother was just typical aristocracy of France. So you never serve a meal without a huge appetizer and main dish, and you name everything else that goes with that.
That's incredible.
So that was a shock. You're right. When I came back to the States and when we were invited, and when people say serve yourself or go to the fridge,
right,
that doesn't go very well with the French mindset.
It's just all laid out in the bar and that's all you have.
Correct.
I mean, it's just one round of eating.
Yes.
Which sounds so peasant right now. I'm saying it. I feel like I should have courses at my next meal.
Well, courses are actually interesting, and I quote that in my book, because courses are allowing us to take more time and to we actually eat less when we eat in courses, because somehow what your stomach is sending messages to your brain saying if you eat too fast and all at once, your stomach sends the message way too late, and therefore you eat more than you ought to. When you eat in courses, small amounts, small portions, your brain is telling your stomach, this is good, you can stop now. And so that would be one of the reasons I would say typical Europeans are not as fat as typical Americans because of not eating all at once, big portions. But that's just by the way.
Well, that could be a best-selling book. Speaking of his book, we will delve into it later, but he has written a book titled Food for Thought, Reflections and Recipes. And just a description on Amazon, it said, or maybe even in the book, it says, Food for Thought represents a lifetime of reflection on the place of food in the Christian life. For pastor and chef Francis Foucachon, food is not just fuel for our bodies, it is about community and family relationships. It is about beauty and flavors. It is about God-given pleasure and art. In Food for Thought, Francis also shares a collection of delicious personal recipes and sage counsel for readers considering the restaurant business. So I do have this book, and I was most delighted with the collection of delicious personal recipes. But it is a wonderful book, and it is sold on Amazon. So we will delve into that a little bit more. But back to your story. just real quick, we talked about you being trained as a chef. How long did you work as a chef before deciding you were called to the ministry?
Well, my training was the official 3 years of training. So you have two options in France. You can go to the culinary school and spend 3 to 4 years, or you can choose the apprenticeship, where you work in a restaurant with a chef, sometimes many chefs, and you go to school in the afternoon. So I choose the apprenticeship, and so then the key is who is going to be the chef who trains you, how much does he know or she knows, and therefore part of the deal when they take an apprentice in France is that the chef has to cover a lot of other recipes that is not on the regular menu. And so I had to practice cooking other things, and I practiced on the employees. So that was a good way for them to criticize me. Sometimes they hated me, sometimes they loved me, based on how well I served them. But that's the route I choose. So 3 years, then you have at the end of 3 years you go through a special where you have written exams. And then the actual cooking exam, when you have one of the greatest chefs, actually, I had Paul Bocuse as one of the, evaluators. Paul Bocuse is being known the best chef in the world. He just passed away. He had restaurants all over the world, and he's from Lyon, my hometown. So he was there. So you can imagine 6 of us and 6 guys like Paul Bocuse watching you. Wow. And they basically tell you, it's like, in the TV, these shows where they tell you, you have an hour to do this. Mm-hmm. Well, basically they gave us a menu, and they say they give us a lot of ingredients, more than we needed, mm-hmm. and they are watching you, and they are basically seeing how you're working, and then at the end they test your food, and you pass or you not pass. Wow. Well, I passed, and I was relieved. And then I worked after that many years in different places, mostly in France and mostly in Switzerland during the summers, in different types of restaurants. The more options you have to work in different types of restaurants, the better, because you learn every time. Cooking is like everything else. You learn all the time. Whether or not you are a chef, you're still learning.
That's wonderful. So now fast forwarding back to, which it does surprise me when you came to the United States that you would work as a plumber versus going to a restaurant, because you were offered a restaurant. So what made you choose plumbing over working in a restaurant? Just wanting to try something new?
No, it's because I didn't speak any English.
Oh, well, that's true. And the plumbers could just point or show you what to do.
Listen, the boss told me, he was a wonderful boss, a Christian boss. He was in Orlando, Gordon Miller Plumbing. And he told me, I kind of understood what he was saying. He said, you need to know only 2 words when you do plumbing. The first word is dig. The second word is deeper.
I just wanted some muscular arms, and they didn't care what language you spoke.
I tell you, people go to the gym and they pay to get muscles. I got paid to make muscles by digging ditches.
That's right.
It was a great school for me, especially because when I got to the point where I was a chef, I had people working for me. And then I had to start at the bottom again to be the one who does all the dirty jobs. And it's humiliating, and that's also a great school for character. And I would say, I've told Donna many times, I think I became a man in Florida when I left the socialist mindset of France, and I realized that we have 2 little girls. We got to provide for them, and I got to work hard, and I got to start at the bottom. But I did make good money. I had regular raises, and I was doing well. By the time I left Orlando, I could do just about anything with a blueprint. However, I was not ready to do plumbing for the rest of my life.
Right.
So
no, you were ready to get back in that kitchen.
Yes.
Okay, one of my very favorite stories involved the time when he started as a plumber and Donna packed him a lunchbox. Donna, can you tell us this story?
Oh, how well I remember it. We had been in the States for 3 days, fresh off the boat, as they say, fresh off the plane anyway. And Francis was there as a Frenchman. He'd never lived in America. He did not know any English. He did not know the language, but he had this job that started then 3 days after we arrived. So he went off to work. And being the Frenchman that he is, who appreciates food, I packed him a nice lunch Tupperware with appetizer, main dish, cheese, dessert, whatever. I don't remember exactly, but it was a full-course picnic meal. So he tells me that on that first day at work, maybe you want to tell this? That's what I want me to tell him?
Well, I can say, because that's it's like if it was yesterday for me. Here you are in a truck. Remember, it's a plumbing truck, and you hear the pipe gingling on the top of the truck. Mm-hmm. And so you are running from one job to another, and that's about 12 o'clock. And for me, 12 o'clock is the time to eat.
It is lunch
and
time.
so, yeah, and so normally it's 2 hours. So I'm literally on the
table somewhere.
Yeah, that's right. I'm looking for a table. I'm looking for a picnic table, because in France, on the side of the road, regularly you find these spots, picnic tables. And so I'm looking for my picnic table. And the plumber, Chris, his name was, he said, it's time to eat. I said, yeah, no, it's time to look. So I'm looking for the table. And then he grabbed something under his seat, which was a brown bag. And then I looked at him thinking, what in the world is he doing? And then he just got something out that happened to be a peanut butter sandwich. And he just gulped this, like in 2 gulps. He just, as he's driving with the left hand, he's just pouring that in his mouth and chewing. And they say, stop to eat, full mouth. And I said, these people are really crazy. And so, okay, I understand at that time that we're not going to have the picnic table. So I started to take out of my lunchbox my appetizer. Mm-hmm. And I put it on the dash, thing that's just moving around. And so by the time I am reaching my appetizer, I just got a few bites, we got to the new job. And he says, at that point, he says, well, it's time to go back to work. And I said, hey, I've got my main dish and my cheese course and my dessert. And so he just said, sign language, basically, no, you did. Yeah, exactly. So
like
I had to put everything back in the lunch box and go to work. And I really thought, these Americans are crazy. Now, I know when he looked at me and he saw this, he thought I was crazy. He thought, what planet does it come from? And then, of course, I thought the same thing, which, again, there was a clash of cultures.
Right.
And I was not just a regular Frenchman. I also was a chef. So that adds to the level of surprises coming to the United States.
Mm-hmm. And meanwhile, I'm back at home, and there was another aspect of American culture that Francis encountered that day, and it was the American work ethic, get the job done. Mm-hmm. So it got to be about 5 or 6 o'clock, and Francis said, okay, it's about time to go home. But they had dug, how big of a trench do you remember?
It was a 30, 40 feet.
30, 40 feet trench, and so they got the pipes and everything, and Francis thought, okay,
it's 5 o'clock.
And the guy said, oh no, we've got to finish it. We've got to cover it all back up. And so I was at home, no cell phones then.
Oh, true.
So I was at home with my baby on my shoulder, thinking, where's my husband? He's gotten lost in this foreign land. I'm going to be a widow. I know something has happened to him. And he got home, I think it was like 9:30 that night, and he left super early that morning with no contact.
Wow.
Well, that's okay. Actually, I ate my lunch on the way back home that evening, so I had my dinner at the same time. So
it all worked out. You got to taste that delicious lunch.
Yes.
I just know I want Donna packing my lunches from now on.
She does a great job.
That sounds amazing. Mm. So you lived in the U.S. for a while. You decided to go back to France for seminary.
Yes.
And you completed seminary. You also helped to start a Christian school there, a French-speaking Christian school.
Yep.
And I'm assuming you have 5 children, grown now with grandchildren. Were they a part of this Christian school? Were they students at this school?
Yes, actually, the way you start a Christian school in France, at that time there was none. We were creating the first one.
Oh, wow.
And so one of my professors, Dr. Peter Jones, and another couple, 2 other couples and us, decided to start kind of like a homeschool co-op. Mm-hmm. And that became a Christian school. So it's called La Nouvelle Alliance. It's still in existence.
The New Covenant as well.
As a matter of fact, I was on the phone yesterday with someone who works there. And so yeah, we started that Christian school, and we have the conviction that this is Christian education is not an option for Christian parents. So yes, our kids went there. We had at that time only
optional.
Sorry, yes.
Not
Thank you.
optional.
Well, I'm glad you hear the
That's
correct.
not
Yeah.
option means it's not a choice.
That's right, an optional. Thank you.
It's not optional.
And our two little girls went to that Christian school.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then how did they end up in Moscow, Idaho from France?
Well, that's-
Children grew up.
Yeah, well, they did grow up.
And it was time for our sons to go to college. We had met a family from Moscow in our few years preceding us coming here, a family, the Wentz family, who came to Lyon, to live for a year to give their children a European experience. They are the ones who started telling us about Moscow, about New St. Andrews College, about Christ Church. And after they had left and been gone for a year, they invited us to come. They said, Francis, we're going to bring you here so you can experience a ministerial conference here. We all ended up going. Our sons toured NSA, and they said to Francis, Daddy, this is where we want to come to college. So Daniel was ready to start college. David was a year away, and we came for initially just 1 year, and that was 18 years ago. Here we are still.
Somehow you stayed, and one of my biggest regrets, I did have a younger sister that lived here at the time, and I did visit, and you just assume when you go somewhere for a visit that what's there will always be there. So there was this high-end French restaurant in Moscow called West of Paris. And I don't know what the reasoning was, if it was just a short visit or if I had young children. I don't really remember why I made a terrible decision to not go to West of Paris on one of my visits, because it was the restaurant that Francis and Donna were running and now no longer do run. They have moved on to back to full-time ministry, and now you are running Huguenot Heritage. So tell us, well, first of all, your restaurant here, how many years did you
We
run the
run it
restaurant?
for 6 years about. And
Sold in 2011.
so the idea was, once we decide to stay here, to put our kids through NSA, I was hoping to finish my thesis I was doing a doctorate of ministry with RTS in Orlando. And so I thought, this is great, I can spend a year writing my thesis, and then we were supposed and actually planned to go back to France to plant another church. And our kids begged us to stay here. They were, there was Deborah, Daniel, and David. Barry was young, and they said, we're going to make big decisions, and we want you around. And sure enough, they made very big decisions, because that's when they found their husbands and wives.
For sure.
So we decided to.
Job decisions.
Yeah.
So I left Mission to the World and took my retirement from the PCA and started that high-end French restaurant. And the goal was to help our boys to pay their education. And so they worked full-time. They were the main servers. We had other employees too, but they worked, and they paid all their bills in cash with all their tips. Now, that restaurant paid well on tips.
I can imagine.
So they made actually very good money. And so we that's the first time I was actually running a restaurant. I have been working as a chef in the past, and that was a long time ago, so that was kind of a learning on the curve, having to figure out everything. Donna was working full-time with me, and we did quite well, and we run it for over 5 years. And when our boys were done with college, with NSA, I knew it was time for me to go back to the ministry. So I sold it, and I created Huguenot Heritage with a desire to train French-speaking pastors from the French-speaking world, which is how many million people speak French?
Easily over 300 million.
Yeah.
And rapidly increasing because of the exponential growth in French-speaking Africa. The projections are amazing at how many people will speak French in 20 years.
Really?
So we partner with Third Millennium Ministries, who has been doing that in many languages, and we do the French. They do that in Chinese, in Russian, in Spanish, and so it's video courses. We give it for free, and we make sure that people can be trained at home, so they don't have to come to our seminaries. Since over 90% of people from third world countries, over 90% come to our seminaries and don't go home, don't go back home. So we thought we need to bring seminary to them, so they stay in their countries, in their villages, in their churches, and we bring the training to them. So that's what we have been doing now for almost 10 years.
Right. HeritageHuguenot.fr.
Yeah.
FR. I'm saying it all in French.
Okay.
So the adjective goes behind the noun in French, so it's HeritageHuguenot.fr. HeritageHuguenot.fr. If you want to see those courses.
Okay. Now, how would we find your site in English?
Well, it doesn't.
Is it just HuguenotHeritage.com?
Okay. But of course, it doesn't have the courses on it. If you want to see the real thing with the courses with Francis and the audio and video, it's HeritageHuguenot.fr. HeritageHuguenot.fr.
But we still cook, actually. See, that's the thing. I'm doing Huguenot Heritage, but actually the way I'm being raising money is doing fundraising banquets. Mm-hmm. So cooking is still part of our lives, which is really part of fun and why I like to share also what we're doing.
An excellent chef, and last year I had the privilege of working with him at the President's Dinner, the New St. Andrews President's Dinner that he ran. He was the head chef. I don't know if I could call myself a sous chef, but
You did great. You and your sister were very hard.
It was so much fun, and the food was incredible. I don't think I've had a meal like that in my lifetime. So I felt very honored and blessed. It was just incredible. So
you saw more than his cooking skills, his culinary skills. You saw his organizational skills, which are amazing.
Yes, he took a community kitchen and he had that thing whipped into shape faster than you can turn around. He was moving shelves and organizing things, and it worked like clockwork. I mean, there were numerous people in the kitchen, and it ran so smoothly. It was really a cool thing to be a part of. So
yeah, it was fun.
So tell us, when you have a large family here now, all your children are married and you have grandchildren, you obviously are cooking for a large crowd a lot of times. What is one of your favorite things to prepare?
Oh my, the interesting thing is Donna used to cook all the time at home. And actually she has been saying recently how before we moved to Lyon, France, when we were church planting in Quebec, I almost never cooked. She cooked all the time. And
I kind of theoretically knew he had these amazing skills, but I hadn't seen it fully until the restaurant.
But then in Lyon, of course, part of church planning is to have people over, so I got back to cooking a lot, and then all my kids were quite involved, just helping, serving, so forth. So now we're back here, and I decided, well, let's keep cooking and get to enjoy other things. And so we, when we have our kids, usually every Sunday, it's just about whatever we cook, my goodness, we have something different every Sunday.
Honey, I would say one thing that characterizes anything you make is a sauce made from stock, homemade stock.
Yeah.
Because that was your specialty. You were a saucier,
yeah,
a sauce specialist in France.
And actually trying to do something that we don't get in any other restaurants. And even in our restaurant, West of Paris, I purposely didn't use much garlic. Not that I don't like garlic, I actually love garlic, but I want people to come to taste something that was not like they would find any other places. So there was not Italian type or Spanish type or Mexican or just typical American type, which is hamburger. I try to do something different. So at home, I do the same. I want my kids to come and enjoy and feel like we are back in France. And so So it's not just the food, it's just the way we set the table, the way we eat. We take the time. A lot of our conversation takes place around the table. It's becoming a challenge with all the grandchildren because they are noisy, wonderfully so.
And there's so many of them. There are 30 of us.
That's right. So
each Sunday.
we thought we had a big dining room and big kitchen. It's actually getting too small, but that's okay. So what I typically do is we have it's usually after church, and the key in cooking is really it's part of when we want to think about Sabbath dinner, it's prep work. Anything you can do ahead of time, the day before, is crucial because then you relax. So you come back from church and everybody's coming and everybody's really hungry. They want to eat right away and say, okay, let's have. So we usually have a glass of wine and appetizer. Hors d'oeuvre when we are actually fixing up the last things, warming up all the food. So we usually have an appetizer. And then a main dish, vegetable, starch, often a cheese course, and a dessert. And so that takes time. We have a lot of birthdays because of all these grandkids. So even last Sunday we had 2 birthdays. Next Sunday we have another one. So we usually do a lot of birthday celebrations. And whenever a family is not able to come, then it's our chance to invite somebody else. So we do once in a while try to add somebody to our long table.
I'm sure
most of the time we feel like they can't take it. It's too noisy.
It's too noisy.
I'm sure they are just speeding on the way home from church to your house if they have an invitation.
One thing I think is a key to what you do is maybe you'd want to tell about how you make the stock and freeze it and how you can at the last minute make the sauce. And
that's kind of one of the things that I wanted to cover today because of the key of how do we learn, how do we plan well, and I've got a system that has worked really well, and I have a wonderful freezer. So, like people use can of mushroom sauce or stuff like that. That's not my style.
No, I can't see you opening a can of cream of mushrooms.
I don't think you've ever done that. Ever.
I don't think I ever did. It's heresy for me. Yes. but I do have something incredible in my freezer. Once every 6 months, I order through a company here some veal bones, and I make what we call a brown stock. The brown stock is not a beef stock, it's not a chicken stock, it's a brown stock, which is a veal stock. It's actually the term, when the people think of taste buds, we have 4 taste buds, where some scientists discovered years ago, a Japanese man actually, he said there's a 5th one. And the 5th one is called umami, and umami is exactly what the veal stock is. It's just a different taste bud. I do a veal stock, which is a lot of veal bones, and then I put celery, carrots, onions, bay leaves, thyme. Let's see what goes in it. And anyway, a lot of water. I let it boil down for 2 to 3 days, very gently. And so what happens is at the end of that time, and that's the basic brown stock. People use tomato or garlic, but I want to give it the most neutral brown stock because once that stock is done, what happens is when it's reduced down to about a third of the liquid, I go through, I filter the whole thing, and let it rest overnight, and then in the morning, all the fat goes on the surface, I scrape it out, and then I boil it down again, and then the flavors that are in that, this is like a concentration of flavors. It's it's actually like a gelatin when it's cold, and that's the gelatin coming out of the bones. So the flavors are so incredible. I put everything in small containers. I put them in the freezer. So let's say that we just had it actually this weekend. Okay, we had some friends from Billings coming over, and it was planned. They came for a wedding here in town, and it was planned for them to stay just on Friday dinner for Friday night. Then we found out the next morning that actually they love to stay there for lunch as well. So then I had already planned lunch for other guests, and then we had a big party on Sunday. So I had to very quickly change my menu, and right away I was able to pull some chicken out of the freezer, and then let it defrost very quickly, and then I could pull out my freezer, that stock, and very quickly I was able to make a chicken curry. So I had all the flavors in my stock. I had white wine, I had curry, I had chicken. I said, okay, I can get some rice quickly or mashed potatoes, and we were able to pull together another full-fledged dinner. And so that's the key when you have last-minute guests, or you don't have much time during the week, you come back from work, you can pull out things on your freezer that has been doing your work for you. It's prep work that is a small container, so if you need 2, you take 2. So I say the key to any kind of cooking is the prep work ahead of time, having the things that you need ahead of time in your freezer, and also the wine you need for cooking. I don't cook with cooking wine. I cook with real wine.
When we had the restaurant,
the wine you're going to drink.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
For the wine that would go in his dishes, he would go out and take off the shelves the wine that we sold and put it in the dishes. I had another thought about the restaurant. How many times, honey, did we hear clients, guests say, when you serve them meat with one of your sauces, they'd say, I've never tasted anything like that in my life. And the reason was because it was this umami taste.
Yeah.
It is the sixth sense that's equal to what the sixth sense tastes. So they really hadn't tasted anything like it probably.
Oh yeah, it's very unique. And so I've been doing cooking classes in the past, and so I'm actually teaching how to do this, encouraging people. Let's say you can work as a team in the family. You can get your kids around, everybody gets to chop things, and you can actually see the process, and your kids can learn how to do it, and then they learn how to filter it and how to put it in containers, put it in the freezer.
And so every 6 months is not too often to do it.
Yeah.
You have instructions about how to make it in your book.
Yes, it's in the exactly. I explain how to make the brown stock, also the chicken stock, fish stock, of course, all kinds of stocks is good to have. We don't throw anything in the kitchen. If you have a big carcass of chicken, let's say that you roast 2 or 3 chicken for a big crowd, you have all the leftover bones. This is exactly. You use that. You can boil things like that. Fish, all the bones, fish bones. You can reduce that. Last summer, I had a lady that we helped basically fed during COVID because she was dying, and she's totally back on her feet now. French food does wonders. It's better than medicine.
I should have called you when I got sick.
Well, anyway,
You healed me.
Yeah, and anyway, she said out of the blue, she said, "Well, I've got tons of tomatoes, and take it." And so she's a former U of I professor, and she's growing things. And I said, "Are you sure?" "Sure, yeah." She said, "Go take." So I took tons of tomatoes. And so what did I do? I made a huge pot of tomato, and I made my own tomato sauce. And that goes too. It goes in the freezer. So you see, once you have these things, you have not just a backup, but you have quality. So you can last minute do something at the last minute, but it's not just throwing food on the. It's not just trying to fill up a stomach.
Right.
You want to fix something nice.
Fries
yes.
And frozen something else.
That's right.
You're pulling out something that is homemade, but it's a shortcut.
That's right.
You're ready to go because you've already done all the.
That's right.
The long-term prep ahead of time.
That's right. And, in shortcuts, there's room for that. Sometimes, you say, okay, mashed potatoes, for instance. I'm giving a secret there. Because what they sell in the mashed potatoes in the stores, they're actually pretty good. And if I calculate the time it would take us to peel them and do it, so I still do mine, but I say, sometimes, okay, shortcut right there, mashed potatoes.
Well, you said the ingredients are just so clear. They're
right.
And that's another thing, people need to know. I read the ingredients when I go to the store. So
great tip.
I explain in my book, when I go to the grocery stores, I actually almost never go in the center. I go around. If you think about it, around the grocery store is where they have the fridges, and therefore the fresh produce. So let's say you go to Rosaris here in town. So you go right away on the right, and then you have the huckleberry is different in the back, but then you go to all the vegetable place, and then you go around the store. This is all the fridges. So you take the fresh things, and you finish with the meats fresh, and then you get to the cashier. I rarely go in the middle because what you have in the middle is all the canned food, all the things with a long list of things that you just don't want to put in your body. So when you buy things, when you go buy ice cream, eat a little bit less, but go for the ice cream that has maybe 3, 4, maximum 5 ingredients. Whenever I see something that has more than 2 lines, I basically put it back.
And ingredients you can't read, or you don't even know what they are.
On the top of it, exactly. It's not just small. You don't know what it is.
It's like, what in the world? And
Yes.
with ice cream, it should be pretty simple.
Yeah, and you know it's bad ice cream when it's staying on the counter, and then 2 hours later it's still solid.
Not melted.
Then you know you're in trouble.
It's not worth the calories,
No,
in my opinion.
yeah, exactly. So, yeah.
Okay, so do you have a specific menu? Like, I know you've made so many amazing things, but do you have one particular one you would share?
Well, I can talk about a very easy one actually. I just taught on a class recently. This is the time in France when people eat crêpes. No, when I say crêpes, it's not creepy. You know, people say it's creepy. I say no.
I always said crepe.
Crepe, yeah. Well, it's crêpe.
Just butchered it.
But crepe is okay, not creepy.
How did you say it?
And it's crêpe.
Okay.
Les crêpes. So
I won't try to say
it's a fun thing because again that could be a fun thing with friends as well. And so this is like you can have a party, a crepe party, and so you can have savory crepes, and then you can have sweet crepes. And actually, when you make your crepe batter, you make the same one at the beginning, and then you remove half of it, and you add some sugar and vanilla. And then you have a sweet crepe batter. So then you flip the crepes, and I encourage people to buy special crepe pans. They're already made for that, and that's just so much easier to flip them.
You can order a good one at Bed Bath & Beyond.
Yeah.
Right?
So
and they're not expensive.
No, they're not expensive. They are
pan.
Teflon. And so they are great for that. And so you flip the crepe, so it's a lot of fun. People have fun flipping it the wrong place, and
Some of them end up on the stove or on the floor.
that's right.
So, be a fun party.
Yeah, and then you can actually I gave in that class very easy. That was for children, for teenagers, a very easy recipe of chicken curry. So you can cut cubes of white chicken, and then you sear it, and it's very simple. Salt, pepper, red curry. I use red curry, and then you pour a little bit of flour and cook it. And you make sure you want to cook your flour because otherwise it's going to taste flour. So it's got to cook but not overcook. And then you pour a little bit of white wine, a little bit of chicken stock, and the reduction, a little bit of cream. This is it. This is so simple. And then you fill up your crepe with that. And then you can eat it.
Savory crepe with that in it
It's really fun. And then, of course, you can, if you really have fun also this time of the year, is you use some smoked ham and some Gruyere cheese, and you melt it inside the crepe and put that in your oven. That's also delicious. And then you use the other crepes, the sweet crepes, to do a little orange sauce, so crepe Suzette, for instance. So it's so easy, fresh oranges. You peel the orange and you blanchir first, so you boil it in hot water, so you take out the sourness of the orange, and then you put a little bit of sugar, and then let it reduce, a bit of Grand Marnier, and then you have a little bit of sauce. And then you make an English cream. And English cream is a little bit trickier to do, but English cream, crème anglaise in French, it's actually a custard without flour. And so it's tricky to make because if you overcook it, it becomes like an omelette. And if you undercook it, it's just water. And so is a way to do that, and I explained that in the book, how to do it. But just that, it's a simple dessert. Again, preparation. Let's say that you have the party. You have done your batter the day before. Okay. You could actually do your whole curry thing the day before, because that reheat very well. And then, so your Suzette sauce is done before, your English cream is done before. All you do with your friends is just flip the crepes. Cook them, flip them, and have fun. So that's something.
Sounds like a great party.
Yeah, you do that with fun, and
It's
obviously
an activity
that's an
party.
activity.
It's not
Yes.
just you're doing something, so it's a good icebreaker.
How
type
many
party.
pans would you recommend having at the, if you're having a party, would you do one at a time, or do you really have like all burners going with multiple crepe pans?
Well, actually, I have two, and you have to have at least minimum two. Also, a key thing, you have to always keep in mind, you don't want people to be waiting too long to eat. So the key thing there will be, I usually bake, I would say for a party of 20 people, I will probably bake at least 20 crepes ahead of time. And I keep them in the warmer. So, and then when people arrive, they do their crepes, but some others who are not doing the crepe, flopping them, can actually start eating. So you're not having a line of people waiting, and then really it's you don't want this to dry. You want this to be a fun thing as you're actually enjoying it together. So that's for the kind of party that young people love to do.
Do they stand around and eat as they're being made, or do y'all have it at a table?
We have both. We have both. Basically, what we usually do is we still set the table, but then there's a rotation, and usually somebody is there with a camera because it's always fun. So when somebody flips it wrong, make sure everybody's laughing, and then so we do again. That's right. And you do that, and then there's a rotation, but this is a chance for people to talk and have fun around the table. That's for a fun party. Now
you have a great setup for that, having an open kitchen dining
Yes.
area. Your kitchen can be seen from the dining.
Correct.
Which is really great.
Yeah,
So
and that
set
works.
around.
In that case, that works well. That would not work if I had a closed-in kitchen. So it's very different.
So then you would make them all ahead of time and just have them hot.
Correct.
Just sit on the table, and that way people aren't, okay, now it's your turn. Go to the closed kitchen by yourself.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so that actually is a full menu, including dessert.
That's
that
right.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah. But of course, we do other dinner. A typical dish for Sunday would be like, again, something you can do ahead of time. So like, let's say a bœuf bourguignon, burgundy beef. So that's something you can cook the day before. You can actually reheat it 2 or 3 times. The more you reheat it, the better it is, actually. And so a bœuf bourguignon, cooked ahead of time. This morning, actually, I had a break, a few minutes. Say, I've got some chicken. I made some coq au vin. So chicken, red wine chicken. So I have it now, and actually it's cooling in the snow outside, and that will go in my freezer for one of these emergencies. So you see, whenever you see something that needs to be used, okay, chicken, I know I'm not going to use it today or tomorrow. I like to cook things fresh. Then, okay, I've got 10 minutes here. I'm going to do a coq au vin. So you can always prepare things ahead of time, and the key for a big dinner again is you cook the vegetables at the last minute, but everything else that can be cooked ahead of time, you do it, so you can be with your guests.
Yes. And Donna, what is one of your favorite menus to prepare?
I was going through my recipe box before we came, and I was thinking of how the internet has changed our lives. We can go and get a recipe for anything. Just pull it up on the internet. But I have in my box recipes from my grandmother.
Those are the best.
From her sisters and friends, from my mother, from my sister. But I was thinking back as I looked at these recipes. They're on everything you could imagine. There are recipes on napkins. There are recipes on little pieces of paper. There are recipes on postcards. There are recipes on pieces of paper that are almost illegible.
Wow.
Of course, recipes on newspaper, as newspaper articles, all kinds of stuff. Women didn't have much access to processed foods. They couldn't buy ready-made stuff, and yet they didn't have the internet to pull up recipes, so they were always exchanging recipes. You women would just constantly be doing this in a doctor's office, waiting.
Yes.
All these handwritten recipes, staying recipes, and of course, this is from ages ago, from Sanford, North Carolina. Every church had their recipe book. So anyway, I just brought a recipe that I used to love to make in Quebec. I'm a very simple cooker. I'm not a gourmet cook like my husband, but It is lentil rice stew, brown rice lentil stew,
That
and
sounds
it's something
really healthy and delicious for wintertime.
Yes, you can cook it ahead of time and then serve a big pot of it with whole wheat bread, and it's a very healthy meal. You put stock in it as well to just give it more body, just delicious. I also brought 2 recipes of my mother's for Christmas cookies, date fingers and Chinese New Year's cookies. Incredibly delicious, and they're no bake, both of them. So
if the oven is full, you can still make dessert.
there we go.
Those sound amazing. Do you pull those out anytime or at Christmas time?
They're Christmas recipes, special Christmas cookies.
ones. Oh, I can't wait to look at them. Well, that's a main dish and dessert as well. That sounds great. What about shopping and cleaning tips? Do y'all have any, with preparing for 30 people every week, do you have any particular advice, sage advice?
Well, shopping is always a challenge here in Moscow as far as getting something unusual. So again, planning is important. So I usually order special things for special dinner, like partridges or quail, pheasants. When I don't shoot them myself, I have to buy them somewhere. So I usually have them in my freezer. So we usually prepare like Saturday for the Sunday. That's great. The key in the kitchen is, the cleaning part. That's one thing I teach when I do a cooking class is typically people are cooking they use a bowl and then they put it on the sink, and then they use a pot and put it in the sink, and then at the end of the day you have the sinks with a pile of dishes. And so I'm teaching how to actually, when you cook with something, you reuse it. So you clean it right away, which is very easy to clean because it's fresh. And then except if that's right. So instead of sitting in for hours, you wash it right away and you reuse it. And so that way, as you get used to do this regularly, when you cook, you don't get this pile of dishes. You use a knife, you wash it and reuse it again. Bowl, same thing, and so a few exceptions, but typically my sink is empty when I'm finished preparing food. And then of course when you have a lot of kids and grandkids, this is a fun age where now we kind of play a game, the restaurant game. And so they go around with a little notebook, little thing we use for servers, and they take the order of coffee, so they actually make the coffee now, and then they are learning how to clear the table. So it's actually getting to the point where our grandchildren have grown old enough that they can clear the table, put the dishes in the dishwasher, and so the adults can enjoy their coffee around the couch.
It's such a great idea. And cousins doing it together, it's a fun time.
It is.
Work.
That's right.
They're going around with their notepad and taking coffee orders. And my kids would have loved that.
Yeah, so it's fun.
I think there's another thing that adds to the enjoyment of a meal. I found when my children were little that if I was making something really simple for lunch, when it was just the children and me, if I set a table and put it on nice dishes, it tasted better to them. If I made them a peanut butter sandwich with carrots, but had set a table with nice dishes, it made it special. And we try to do that. We do it
every Sunday.
We always set a nice table, and one thing we use is cloth napkins. It's more work, but you can find some neutral colors that will go with a lot of things, placemats or tablecloths. I have a whole basket of black ones when I just need something totally neutral to put in with the dishes that I have.
And that's easy because then it doesn't show any stains.
Right.
The black. And that would have been what you would have used in your restaurant at West of Paris, right?
We y'all use white.
You use white napkins.
Okay,
so you are used to treating napkins and making sure they're pristine then.
But having the table set in advance takes away so much stress when you know that everything is ready for someone to come into. It's got everything is on the table, including the beverages. People come in and they really feel welcomed. they feel like you have worked, because you have,
Yes.
and they sense that they're being cared for.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think that the table being set has a lot to do with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I read a book called Mrs. Dunwoody's, can't quite remember the title of it, but it has Mrs. Dunwoody in it, and it's about Southern living and Southern cooking. It's from long ago, and she says that the key to any successful meal, no, don't let anyone tell you otherwise, the key is hard work. There's no way around it.
Great
But
advice.
if you're prepared, if it's done in advance, and people don't sense that, and they can just relax and enjoy what's before them.
Well, and if your mindset is not constantly thinking, how do I get out of this work? I mean, obviously you can use shortcuts and time savers and things like that. And we've already talked about ways to make it quicker when you're preparing the actual meal. But in the end, you have to realize inviting people over, having people to your home, even just feeding your own family just takes a lot of grit and hard work.
It is.
And it really makes a difference what your attitude is.
Yes.
And if you look at it as a gift that you're giving your family, and it's showing them love, I think that can be easy to forget as we see that pile of dishes, in the sink after we've cooked for 3 hours.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Remembering that why we're doing it.
That's right.
And not losing sight of the fact that, God didn't say that our work here on earth is going to be easy.
That's right. Yeah.
So you've mentioned some advice. Do you have any other advice you would share for showing warm hospitality to those coming to your home? How you make them feel welcome besides the setting of the dinner table ahead of time?
Yes, we actually, people sometimes say, we want to help. And we said, no. You're our guest. Yeah, you please enjoy it, sit down. I enjoy it. It's something very, very French, by the way. I'm adapting to Americans, but when here the pattern is, when someone invites you, you say, what can I bring? Mm-hmm. Not in France. Oh. In France, no, you are invited and you are not expected to come and bring the food or part of the food. So there is a real sense of you're our guest 100%.
Okay.
Now, usually the people who are coming to your home bring flowers, a bottle of wine, but we don't expect them to bring food. So we have applied that. So we want our guests to feel truly like, I want to receive you like if I were to receive the president. You're as important as the president. And so we want to treat you. I wouldn't tell the president, bring some.
Bring salad.
Yes. I say, that's an honor to have you to come to my home. And I would like for you, please, thank you for coming. And please enjoy the meal and we're serving you.
Well,
so that's a very
interesting perspective.
It's a very French way.
It is a French perspective, and I do understand it, and I do like that perspective. Now, coming from the South, Donna could speak to this coming from Florida, but in the South, it would be considered rude to not offer to bring food.
I know.
I know. You're learning the American way. So even if I know they're probably not going to let me bring something, out of just common etiquette, would say, well, what can I bring?
Yes.
How can I help with the meal?
Yeah.
And a hostess gift, if they say no, a hostess gift is always a great idea. Like you said, even in France, people might bring some flowers or a bottle of wine or something. So anyway, what were you going to say, Donna?
It works both ways. Yeah. When those same people come to, or when we go to their house, they don't want us to bring anything. But then when they come to our house, it's their turn to relax. They don't bring anything. So it goes both ways. It's a time of relaxing for the one who is invited.
Yeah.
Which, if it does go both ways, then that is a fun thing to look forward to. You really do get to go and just be totally relaxed and enjoy not having to do any work that night.
Yes.
When you accept or not the invitation, all you have to factor in is, do I have that amount of time available? You don't have to factor in, do I have time to make something?
That's true.
It really is.
And if you're in France, you're factoring in how many hours.
Yes.
How many hours does dinner take? I don't know.
Oh yeah, well it does take an average. When you're invited somewhere, you are there for the evening. And actually, that was kind of a shock for us when we came back, and we invited a lot of NSA kids because our kids were there. So they usually used to come for big parties, fondue, whatever. And I was shocked that they came and left 10 minutes later or 30 minutes later because they had another party. And I thought,
our party is
better. So that was kind of and again we adapt because we understand cultures are different, but even when someone invites me, I do say, what can we bring, by the way? Here, and then we have adapted. But when they do come to my house, I become very French. I say, no, come, bring yourself. And so, again, we can manage the culture when we adapt it when we are invited, but when we invite someone, we become very French.
But I have to say, we appreciate the shorter evening, especially as we get older. Even when we lived in France, it was hard for us to go so late because it really would go late, and we like the American way for that part of it.
Especially if you have to wake up early the next morning.
Right.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Well, you wanted a funny story, you said?
Do what?
You wanted a funny story?
I do want a funny story.
Well, let me just tell you, because I'll tell you, they are funny and they are good because they keep you humble. But we were in France actually, and we had our neighbors, and they were high-end society people expecting real good food, and plus they knew I was a chef, so I really wanted to impress them. We had this long, wonderful dinner, and then I don't know if you remember that, Donna.
I know
And then when it was time for dessert, I had made these chocolate lava cakes, and that goes with English cream. Well, that was one time where I was in a hurry, so I actually bought the English cream because you can buy that in France. I mean, it's amazing what you can get in stores in France. So it comes in a jar. It's yellowish, liquid, and it says Crème Anglaise. For some reason, I was in a hurry, and someone must have misplaced something else that was not English cream, but where the English cream was, same type of bottles. So I grabbed it quickly, and I got home, and then I was finishing quickly because I also wanted to be sitting at the table with these guests because actually we were seeking to share the gospel. So I said, I don't want to be in the kitchen too much, so I'm hurrying. So I'm putting that pool of English cream at the bottom, and then my lava cake, and then a little beautiful strawberry, and serve that. And so everybody's starting eating, and I'm too busy to actually eat because I'm talking all the time, so I'm not eating. And I was watching and thinking, I don't have compliments being given on my dessert. I mean, and so, I thought, maybe they don't like it, but that's surprising. Usually they like this dessert. And all of a sudden I took my spoon and I tasted, and it was liquid margarine. Liquid margarine. I never cook with margarine. I would have never bought margarine, and it was so humbling.
Just of oil.
Yeah, it was absolutely disgusting. So I understood now why they were saying nothing, but we had a good laugh after that. But that happens.
Cut the bottom off and just keep eating the cake.
I just told them, please don't eat it. And but we had a good laugh. But it happened also in our restaurant here. We used to have lavender crème brûlée. And we had a big bag with the sugar. Ben. And then we had a bin of salt.
Oh, no.
And,
I see where this is going.
We're busy, people are running, they look alike. And so I had an apprentice who were learning to do these things fast. So he's grabbing what he thought was sugar. And so he's pouring all that on the top of the crème brûlée and burn it.
And in it.
Yes.
And making the custard too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so he totally reversed the recipe. And so So clients started to complain, say, well, I was saying it's really not a crème brûlée we expected.
Something's wrong with this.
Something is wrong, and then I had to go and then I realized, oh no. So see,
salt instead of sugar.
Salt instead of sugar. These kind of things, you laugh. You also pay attention. After that, you say it would be a good idea to put a big sign: salt and sugar. But things like that happen in cooking, and sometimes when that happens, it's a chance to laugh at yourself and laugh with your guests.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Well, I have a true confession. Do you want to hear my true confession?
Yes.
So when I invited y'all over to eat, now I do know that I need to make homemade beef and veal stock and all of the rest, but I had them over to eat along with some other people. And I really wasn't nervous cooking for a French chef. I should have been, but I'm like, I have made this recipe so many times, and my podcast listeners have heard this story on my episode, but I don't know if Francis knows this yet. So I made it, tried and true. I'm like, I'm going to, not make a brand new recipe, which I have done before. I do not recommend that. Do not make a brand new. You think this is great, don't trust it. Tried and true beef stew. But when I was getting ingredients, instead of just grabbing just a regular beef stock, I saw something that said organic bone beef sipping stock, or something real fancy, organic. I'm like, oh, this is higher end. I'm going to use this. So I make the stew, and the evening goes on, and at the end of the night, I tasted it. It was good. It was good, but it was sweet. And my husband later, after y'all left, he said, "These carrots are awfully. The carrots in that soup were really sweet. I guess I don't know what. Even he noticed it." And I just kept puzzling over it after dinner and doing dishes. I'm like, I've made this so many times. What is wrong? And so I go to the refrigerator because I had a little bit of that beef, that organic bone beef broth or whatever it was in the refrigerator. And I turn and look at the ingredients, and I guess because it was made for sipping or people eating it, they had added sugar to it.
Oh my! Okay.
Who knew?
I remember it was delicious. So I specifically remember.
But I was like, well,
I had a second.
Well,
I took a second.
It's like, well, God just wanted me to be humble. I had sugar in my beef broth. That's what the difference was.
Guess what? That's how you create recipes, actually.
It is. But, in that instance, I was a little miffed. I was like, well, next time I won't grab a brand new ingredient and try. I steered away from the brand new recipes, and I went for a brand new ingredient. So I learned a lesson that day.
Yeah, well, we're all learning.
But I also had to laugh at myself.
Yeah.
I'm not going to call them and apologize for how sweet their soup was.
We enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Yes. Yep. That was very good. Very delicious.
It was fun to have y'all over. And it's fun to cook for a French chef, even though there are many, many things. After reading the book, going back to his book, Food for Thought, I have read it cover to cover, and there are many things that I want to learn how to create from there. And a lot of what you mentioned are in that book. I remember the orange crêpes Suzettes. That was in there, as well as the beef stocks and lots of other tips. So
yes.
I'm excited. What is your must-have kitchen item? And where can we find it?
Well, I'll tell you what, I brought them here. So,
talk about?
Some people have to have like 20 knives. I say no. All you need is really basically 4 or 5 knives. And you have this one here. They're all German knives, by the way. They are high quality. And so the brand is Woodstock.
Oh,
Woodstock.
Yes. Okay.
So, and the key is they have to be sharpened. Most people cut themselves on dull knives. So sharp knife, so a little pear knife, a debone knife, and a serrated edge knife. And then one of these forks, it's like, if you want to know if it's dough, it's a dough too. This is this long fork with this long, and if you think about it, when you want to turn over a full chicken, if you use this very wide, short forks, you mess up your whole meat.
Right.
There, you're allowed to actually go in without messing up the outside of the meat and turn over. So these are really important, and you keep this equipment for your life.
Okay.
The pots I brought here. It's actually we have used these pots since we have been married.
We got these
Yeah,
pots
yeah.
our first
So-
year of marriage.
And so
What brand is
And that's 44 years ago.
well,
AMC
yeah,
at the
it's
time.
it was in France, but I have seen the equivalence here. Basically, the bottom has a very thick copper layer, and then it's stainless steel, and that's a quality thick stainless steel. And once you buy something quality, you don't have to replace it regularly. It really stays. Of course, you have to keep it cleaning nicely. Of course, I am a fan of copper pans as long as they are coated inside with stainless steel. The downside is they're heavy and you have to clean them all the time, the outside, for shining. But if you want something even, like when I do my English cream, I use that every time because it keeps my heat evenly, and therefore you don't have one side that is cold, one side is hot. So quality pots and pans, quality, only a few good knives and forks, and you keep it for life.
Do you have, Wusthof is the brand, do you have a particular line or just any high quality?
Any
from
types of,
Wusthof or
yeah, I would say this is a good quality. This German's knife, the best knives are Japanese actually knives. The French also, if you ever see a knife made in France with a THIRES, tiers, I would say they are the best European knives. The German will be next, but the Japanese really top them all. The Japanese knives, they are very expensive. The steel, the way they work the steel, they don't get dull easily, and they are like razor blades.
Wow.
So you got to be careful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join me. This has been a fabulous time. This is going to be a fabulous episode. There are so many things to learn and glean and so much wisdom here. So thank you.
Thank you. It was
It's
fun.
been fun.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Bess.
All right. Until next time. Bye.